Thank you. Okay, we want to welcome everyone to our West Haven City Council meeting. My name is Rob Vanderwood. I'm the mayor of West Haven and will be chairing this meeting tonight. Today is September 17th, 2025. It is 6 o'clock p.m. and we're glad to have everyone here at our council meeting with us tonight. We have one council member that will be hopefully getting on remote that is out of town. And we appreciate the council and our staff being here as well as you being here and our sheriff's office attending over here as well, Lieutenant Ensley. So we'll go ahead and get started with our meeting. We want to make sure that we have a good, quick meeting that we can get through quickly, and we got a lot of things to go through tonight. So we'll get started with our opening ceremonies. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Call. And we'll move to our prayer or moment of silence with Councilmember Saunders.
Please stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ask that we just have a 30-second moment of silence in light of the tragic events of last week, the Charlie Kirk assassination and all those affected by it. So we'll start that now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember Collin, Councilmember Saunders. We'll move on to our next item on our agenda, item 3, the swearing in of our ceremony for our youth council. We're excited to have our youth council here. It seems to be quite rejuvenated. This is for our 2025 and 2026 West Haven Youth Council for this year. Our youth is a big part of our city, in charge of our annual pumpkin walk, the Easter egg hunt. In addition, they plan and carry out 2 service projects for the city, with the first coming up this fall for Canesville Elementary, where they will repaint the U.S. state and Utah counties maps and provide new nets for the basketball hoops on the school playground. In January, they attend the Utah League of Cities and Towns Day at the Capitol, where they meet with other city youth councils and have lunch with our local representatives, which is a great opportunity for them. Their advisor is Mrs. Sarah Wynn, and we appreciate all her work that she puts in, along with other people that help with that. We also assign a council member to the youth council, and that is our council member Dixon, Kim Dixon, that helps with the youth council as well. So what we'll do is I think we'll start with the folks that we have on here. We have Grace Wynn that will sign as the mayor of the youth council. We have Kenny Olson will be the assistant mayor. We have Oliver Olson, Calvin Olson, Lizzie Wynn, Enoch Wynn, Ali Razor, is that pronounced right? Razor, and Ada Barenson. And we have Zoe Burrows and Emily Higgs. Did I get everybody? Okay, good. Well, we'll have the mayor come up first, and we'll do that swearing in, and I will be doing that.
I, Bryce May,
do solemnly
do solemnly
affirm
affirm
that I will support
that I will support
being a member
being a member
appointed
appointed
as the mayor
as the mayor
of West Haven Youth City Council
of the West Haven Youth City Council
to obey
and
and defend
defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office with fidelity.
Thank you so much. Very good. Congratulations. We'll call up our next person up here, and this will be Ken Wilson. This is great. Great. Well done. Okay, you ready? All right. Good, just raise your hand. All right, would you repeat after me? I state your name.
I, Kenny Olson,
Being a member
member
appointed to
of
the, as assistant mayor
the
of West Haven City Youth Council,
West Haven Youth City Council,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support
that I will support
and defend the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States
the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of this state,
of this state,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity. We'll have the remainder of those on the youth council, that are members of the youth council, come up and we'll. Okay, everybody just kind of line right here. You can see it. While she makes mistakes. And then you. All right. Long names and everything. Everybody ready? Okay. You want to raise your hand? Hand up. Raise it high. This is important. Okay. All right. And then you'll repeat when I tell you to, you'll repeat your name. Okay. So I repeat your name. Okay, being a member appointed to the West Haven City Youth Council, do solemnly affirm that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Excellent. Congratulations, everyone. We hope that after we can, we're going to see you guys in action, right? See how you guys are doing, because you plan on showing us there. Thank you, guys. We want to thank everyone for doing that and the time it takes to jump in and get those kids all sworn in. It's a fun thing for them, I think, and we want to make sure that they feel like they're part of this process overall. And they're our future for sure. So thank you again. All right, we'll move on to our next item on here. Item number 4, our public presentation. This gives residents a chance to have a conversation, basically, or to speak. We will open this up so that we have on tonight's agenda, each person will have 2 minutes to speak and may address the council only once during this session. Please begin by stating your name and your address. For the record, comments should be respectful, directed to the council as a whole, and free of personal attacks. To ensure everyone has an opportunity to be heard, please avoid repeating points that basically have been made. The council will listen to your comments, but will not engage in discussion or take action on any agenda items tonight. Thank you for helping us keep this meeting orderly and respectful. So if we have anyone that would like to come forward, please come up and do so.
My name is Brett Hogan. Do you want the address of my home or my business? They're both in West Haven.
Just your home address.
Okay, 4816 West Haven Road.
Okay.
I'm here for my business though. I've been at that residence for 18 years and I run my business out of West Haven too on 1900 West, at 3189 South, and 3157 South. I'm the owner of King's Heating and Cooling. I own the two building, and we also have the north building, right? The old Dirk's Plumbing building. I'm here because I'm hoping that I can get some sympathy for or an exclusion on my property for your storage unit rules. The three main reasons are because I'm completely surrounded by industrial area. There is no residential area nearby, or you can't even see it from there. So I'm hoping, and the other reason is I have the two storefronts up front, and no retail business wants to go behind my stores for retail because it'd be so far back off of the road. And all I do is get inquiries for storage units on a weekly basis. Nobody has inquired for a retail because of that reason. So those are the two reasons. And the other main reason is I'm hearing from all over that it's a pretty good necessity for around here because of all of the homes that are getting built, especially the smaller homes or the townhomes and the apartments, that people have no room for those things. So they're having to go quite far because everything's filled up, and they know. And I know that it would be, filled very quickly if I got that exception for that property. So that is basically why I'm here, and I appreciate you guys' time.
Okay.
Okay.
Have you had the opportunity to approach the city?
I have, and they said they're not against it, but they would not come here for me. They're cool with either way.
Okay.
So yes, I've had 2 meetings with them. Gabriel, maybe I can't remember his name, but that's who I met with twice, and he said he completely understands, but that I should come and give the spiel. What's that? Yes, it's zoned. Everything's zoned correctly. The only thing that's holding me back is that 800-foot. There's an 800-foot mark, and my property's 5.5 acres and it's 640. So 800 feet is quite far. So with it being surrounded by industrial area and already, so right now it's only going to collect weeds, right? So we try to keep them down, and you can't really notice them too much because I have 2 storefronts. And that's the biggest thing. I wouldn't mind doing anything for retail, but with it being back there, nothing, there's no hits on it. So
Okay.
anyway.
Perfect.
Any other
So,
questions?
and
Yeah, so that is correct. Our code requires along that corridor, along 1900 West, that storage units are allowed, provided they're set back not less than 800 feet from center line of the street.
Yep. Except there are 2 other ones probably before that rule right by me that are not 800 feet, right? So that's why I'm hoping that, because there's just nothing else that we're really going to be able to do with it. And I'm sick and tired of taking care of the yard, to tell you the truth.
all right,
So
perfect. Well,
anyway,
thank you.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
coming.
Yep.
Yes. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward? Yes, please come up.
Evening, everyone. My name is DeMarco Armstrong. I live on 1938 South, 2650 West. It's about 50 feet from brand new Mountain View Junior High, which is a beautiful facility. I'm here tonight I don't know if this was addressed in the last city council meeting, but if it wasn't, there's some extreme flooding in our neighborhood. We've lived there for about 6 or 7 years. And in the time we moved in, we had some issues, and it's gotten progressively worse. And the promise was that the drainage system was going to be fixed, so this wasn't such a problem, because thank God we need the water. We just don't need it all at
In
once.
your basement.
Yeah, and I'm just here to kind of be the the oil for the squeaky wheel. There's a lot of people in the neighborhood that have addressed this issue. And the problem is we live in such a beautiful city that has really boomed with development. We've been in our house and there was nobody behind us. And now neighborhood's packed. But I don't think that it's being disclosed that this is a flood zone. We've gone through insurance companies and they tell us it's not, but we know it is. So when the water and things come in, a lot of this stuff is damaged and there's nothing that we can do about it. So we're just looking for some sympathy for the city because we love the growth and we love the place where we live. But I think this was a gross use of power on the developers that came in there. And now we have no other recourse because the insurance companies aren't going to really help us out. So we're hoping you as a council lean on some of these developers and really hold up their promises to, I don't know what can be done at this point to get it fixed, but I'm hoping, like I said, new developments and other people that are dealing with this don't let these developers come in and half do the job that they've done in our neighborhood. So just asking whatever can be done. We're leaning on you for that and hope no future neighborhoods or anything have to go through this. It's living too gorgeous of a state to deal with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. What subdivision was that again? We have the address, but
It's the one right next to
Col-
Mountain View
Thank
Junior High. It's what?
It's
Col-
Colby.
Colby
Creek,
Creek,
that's
that's
right.
the one. That's right.
Colby Creek.
Wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to come forward?
I'm here on Colby Creek as well. So my name is Cassie. I live at 1920 South, 2575 West. So I'm just
What
here.
was your last name?
Folkman, sorry. Not good at this public
That's
speaking
okay.
stuff. So I'm just here on behalf of the neighborhood. I know quite a few residents couldn't attend this week, but I just want to talk about the flooding that's consistently happened in our neighborhood. This one storm that was a few weeks ago, it's not new. It's happened for nearly a decade. I've been in my house, 8 years? And there's chronic flooding in our yards, neighborhoods, water inside their homes. Despite spending thousands of dollars, neighbors are spending thousands of dollars on pumps, grading our yards, and everybody's still flooding. We pay stormwater fees intended to maintain and improve the system. And they're always clogged. I feel like when we get water, they're not draining, they're flowing up onto the property. And I know we pay a fee, so I'm also like, where's that stormwater fee going? Like, I think something needs to be upgraded. This issue is personal for me. I've been in West Haven for 30 years. This property was my grandma's farmland. There was never standing water. We would four-wheel, we would snowmobile. But when the developer came in, he built the roads up, took all that good soil, brought in clay soil, so the water doesn't drain. I mean, we spent almost $10,000 just bringing in new soil into our lot. And then everything was fine for us. We didn't have any flooding issues. Ivory built behind us. All their lots are raised way higher than my lot. I voiced my concern 2 years ago when the lots were going in and nothing was ever done. No one ever followed up. They just said everything's to code. But this recent, my whole yard was a lake. Luckily, it didn't get in my house, but my whole yard was a lake. I talked with Ivory. They're going to cut the pumps behind us up because they did see that they were up a lot higher than our lots. But also, is this going to happen again? I would love for them to be able to put a pump in my yard to tie into their system because Ivory did it right. I think when they built the new council members, city understood our issue. And they brought in tons and tons and tons and tons of dirt instead of taking it out. So I just want to know, I want an independent drainage study to assess system capacity of what's happening in the new to impact of the new developments. Upgrade storm drains and pipes. There's not enough storm drains in the neighborhood to deal with all the water that people are pumping into the roads. And then require Ivory to adjust their drainage, which they are, I think, doing. And then fund drainage system in our yard to prevent flooding due to the higher lots behind us. This isn't just about one bad storm. It's been happening for a decade. So I just want some planning, maybe some accountability, not be brushed off. Yeah, I'd love your help.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, anyone else? Okay, we do have one email that had come in. I think it's addressing the same situation.
This,
So we'll put it in the record for our minutes. And it just so we can mention the name on here, it's Jason Verbarg. So yeah, so we all received a copy of it from the council and have read through it. But to sit and read it again, it probably would be about the same thing. So we appreciate him sending this over as well. But we've got a copy of it. We'll put it in the minutes. So thank you for being here for that. Is there anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move forward with
hey,
them.
can I just ask a
Sure,
question?
you bet.
Have we had somebody from the city go over there? Because I'm also very aware of the flooding that occurs over there. We've had folks
Well,
from the city over.
A lot of this was before, our
Yeah, I
time.
know.
However, and I know a lot of our,
The Ivory Homes draining system was an ordinance that was passed when you and I were on the
yeah,
um
that
service
part
district.
definitely was, but they're not having problems as much as you guys because it's downhill. So that's not the problem. I think this is definitely, a developer problem that when it was put in. And I know there's been a lot of issues from just reading about it. And we've had a lot of people, and unfortunately, when these storms come up and dump a ton of water, especially, that's when you see the most problem with it. And I think the city as general had a difficult time as long with other cities, there's just so much water that came down, but that was the purpose but let us look into it, see what we can do. We'll have the staff maybe try and look into that if we can. John, if that works. Okay. Thank you though for being here. Okay, we'll move on to our next item on here. Item 5, upcoming events. We have our music circle, September 22nd of 7 p.m. over at the Barn Community Center. We have our senior lunch bunch, September 24th, that is at 11:30 a.m. We've got a huge crowd coming over there, and council, if you're wanting to attend, you're welcome to, and bring, some smiles for the miles for the seniors. Love it over there. We have our arts festival, which is huge. It's going to be great this year. I'm so excited for it. That's on September 20th, so it's just coming up this weekend, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Should be great. Our Utah League of Cities and Towns annual convention is on October 1st and the 2nd, which is our council meeting is set up for the 1st typically, but this is a training session that the council will be attending. So we will be not holding our council meeting that week. So our dumpster days, another big, huge event for our city. That's in October, the 16th through the 18th. That's for our residents of West Haven. And we have our pumpkin walk looking down the road a little bit for October 27th, and that starts at 6:30 p.m. Is there any other upcoming events that we may have missed on here, the council? Okay, we'll move on to our next item on here. Any council updates, updates on things that are happening or assignments?
I would just like to mention the Youth Council Service Project, which you previously mentioned, but we are doing 2 service projects, one in the fall and one in the spring. And the Youth Council came up with a bunch of ideas at their last meeting and then voted them down. And so what they are doing is, and I've never seen it, but I guess at Kingsville Elementary, there's a big map of the United States and also a big map of Utah and all of the counties, which is rather faded. And then they want to repaint that, and then they are going to replace all of the basketball nets that have been torn down. So that will be coming up in October. And this was something that they did all on their own. Sarah and I just let them go, and they came up with that. So I think that's a great service project for the fall.
Great, thank you. Anything else? We had a great opportunity for the walk to school for Haven Elementary. Got a chance to attend. It was huge. for them, and everybody really enjoyed the school and the new road and the sidewalks out front. It was really a fun time for everybody. They had donuts for us over there, but it was really fun to get to meet all the kids and the parents and everybody that was walking to school that day. So just wanted to let you know about that. It was great. We got more walk to school days coming up with the Country View, and I think that's the last one that we have, I think, is Country View coming up. Okay, we'll move on to item 7, action on consent agenda. This is for city council minutes held on August 20th of 2025. Item B is for Staker Parsons Companies, $149,521.35. We have Staker Parsons Companies for $733.41. And that's it for our consent agenda. Any questions? Not open for,
Move to approve consent agenda items A, B, and C.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on our consent agenda items? Okay, we'll do a roll call on this one. Councilmember Morse?
Aye.
Councilmember Call?
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders?
Aye.
And Councilmember Dixon?
Aye.
And do we have Councilmember Schwab on? Okay, so that's it. So motion carries on that. Thank you very much for that. All right, next item on here is item 8. This is for our public hearing for the purpose of soliciting public input on amending West Haven City Consolidated Fees and Fine Schedule. We'll turn a little bit of time over to you, Stephen, to give us a breakdown on that before we open up our public hearing.
Thank you so much, Council, for considering this. Excuse me, I've had a little bit of a cold. So the main changes that are in front of you tonight are affecting the building department and the community development department and fees. So the primary changes that are under consideration, and one of the main reasons this is in front of you, was an update to state code, which required a different fee for what is called an identical plan. Under state code, this last legislative session was updated to allow a builder to submit a plan set that they would consider an original plan. And then after that, if they submitted a plan that was identical to that original plan within the same building code, that there would have to be an expedited review process and a cheaper plan review fee charged. So right now, under state code, we are allowed to charge a building permit fee plus a plan review fee for these reviews. The plan review fee is really there to compensate staff's time for the review of the actual plans. Currently, we charge 20% of the building permit fee for residential and 65% for commercial and industrial, which is under state law, 65% is the max that we can do. Under the new identical plan fee code, we're only able to charge 30% of the normal plan review fee. And so those are the first set of changes, were to update that and to ensure that that was compliant with state code. We've already changed our online application forms to follow the rest of the procedure. So the last thing we need to do is just update our fee schedule. At this point, we haven't had anybody submit any identical plans, but I would imagine that here in the future, we'll probably see some. And then a couple of the other things we did in the building section is just more reference other adopted fees that we've already been charging that aren't currently listed on the fee schedule, but have been adopted elsewhere in ordinance. So then the next couple changes that we did, as we were going through the fee schedule, we felt like there are a few things that we felt like could mostly just use some clarification within the community development section. There are some redundancies where some fees are listed out twice. And so we felt like this would be a good opportunity to clean most of those up. And so the first set of changes is under the subdivision. We had a preliminary filing fee for 1 to 5 lots is $500, and a preliminary filing fee for 6 or more lots was also $500. And we had a couple of those instances in this section, and so we just removed the duplicates. Under site plan review fees, one of the things that we have been doing under the preliminary review, we've had the full fee charged up front, when typically the preliminary plan is simpler. We're not looking at construction drawings. That's normally not going out to our contracted engineer. Normally, it's just one review. Occasionally there are more, but typically it's a much easier review. And so our current fee schedule requires a higher fee during preliminary and then a lower fee during final. And so what we did was switch those. We also combined, we had a city review site plan fee. We also removed that and just increased the fee for what was the final review, but that was the preliminary site plan. Then for the zoning map amendments, these fees aren't actually changed for residential or commercial zones. We just changed the format to match the format of other fees within the same schedule. We added a clarification for the master development agreement application fee to just clarify what it would be used for. Then we also did add a fee for zoning verification letters. So right now, any property owner in the city can request the city to do research on what their zoning is. Most of the time, it's very simple. We can just look at our zoning map. But oftentimes, we'll have a developer who has a development agreement or has need us to do some research on zoning history and past. And currently, we just offer that as a free service. But we've had several occasions this past year where, somebody would call in or send an email making this request, and it would take us a couple hours to pull out the zoning books, everything else to find that information, put it in an official letter, sign it, and send it off. So we're proposing that in order to help pay for the time that it's taking staff to produce these letters, to add a charge of $50 per letter. And we are going to create an official application for those as well. We also added, we currently require a permit for an accessory dwelling unit or short-term rental permit. We are not proposing, we're proposing to keep that at $0. Mostly because these are numbers that we're required to submit to the state, and we already have a hard enough time getting people to come in and file for those. And so we didn't want to add a fee on to add to the discouragement of applying for those. We would want to keep that at $0. And then the last thing on there is at the very end is we added some transaction fees. The city is moving to accepting online payments for our land use applications and for our building permit fees. But part of that is through the contract where we've entered it with Express Bill Pay. If for whatever reason, if the transaction is not able to go through, they receive a charge either from the credit card company or from the bank, and then they pass that on to us. And so these fees are put in to allow us to charge those to the applicant who caused us to incur such fees. Typically, the reason why Express Bill Pay doesn't just charge that directly to the customer is they don't have any leverage to collect it, where we do have that leverage, because we could, if they submit a bill, they pay online, and whatever their electronic payment doesn't go through for their building permit, we can then withhold their building permit until they're not only pay their building permit fee, but the additional charge. So those are the proposed changes that we're proposing tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that rundown
Yeah.
on everything. I think what we'll do now is, and before we open it up to the council and for questions, we'll probably just move in and see what the public like to do. So I'm ready for a motion to move to a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move into our public hearing then. Does anyone like to come forward for that? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and move for a motion to close our public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is to go back to our general session. That takes us to item 9, action on resolution 46-2025, amending the West Haven City Consolidated Fees and Fine Schedule. I'll open it up to the council for questions at this time.
I just had a question. I don't think we have short-term rentals in West Haven, do
I
we?
think we do.
We
We
do
do.
have some, but not many.
Okay,
We have an ordinance for it.
we do.
Mhm. I also had a question on the zoning verification letter. You said that in some cases it's very simple. You just look it up and it's, you know, you can let people know or whatever. Are you sending letters to those folks as well, or you?
Typically not. Normally,
Okay.
we get these requests if somebody's trying to get, like, a lot of times it's developers who are looking to get a bank to back a loan. Loan, so they can use that, so they can show the bank that says, hey, we have this zoning, this is what our entitlement is, or this is what our entitlements are under the development agreement. That's
I just didn't want residents being charged $50 to ask a question.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be
Very
the case.
simple. Okay.
Okay, other questions?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 46-2025, amending the West Haven City Consolidated Fees and Fines Schedule.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this resolution from the council? Okay, we'll do a roll call on this one. Councilmember Call.
Aye.
Councilmember Morse.
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders.
Aye.
And Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries on that. Thank you. Thanks for your work on that and hope that helps. Right, item 10, action on Planning Commission meeting recommendations. This is action on ordinance 10-2025, amending the Title III Administrative Chapter 32 Organizations and title, I don't know what number that is. Is that 25? Land use? Is it 15? Because I didn't know if it was X or if it was a number on there. Land usage, including Chapter 150 General Provisions, Chapter 156 Subdivision Standards, and Chapter 157 Zoning Regulations. And we'll turn this over to our Community Development Director again, Stephen.
Okay, thank you. So just to begin, I really want to thank the Planning Commission. We worked on this ordinance for several months. They put in a lot of good work. They probably saw several versions of this ordinance before we got to this point. And so I really want to express some gratitude for the hard work they put into creating this ordinance for your review tonight. This ordinance is quite long and there are some big changes. And so just to begin with, I wanted to let the council know that I feel like it is ready to be approved. However, that being said, I understand that there's a lot to it. And so I don't want the council to feel any pressure to approve it right away. Or if you want some more time to read through, ask questions about what's actually being proposed to understand the ramifications of the proposed changes, I think that is very appropriate. So I put together a presentation that was within the packet that I'd like to go through. And then maybe just depending on how the council feels, we can proceed from there. I'm also happy we can go through the ordinance line by line if you'd like to, but like I said, it is quite long. And or you could ask broad questions in general about different goals or policies within that.
Okay.
So Emily, do you just want to go to the next slide? So to begin with, we've been working with the Planning Commission for a while with this. And then the Planning Commission held a public hearing on August 13th, 2025, and made a positive recommendation on the ordinance on August 27th, 2025. During the public hearing, there wasn't any comments that was received. So if you want to go to the next slide. So there's really kind of three main goals or objectives with this ordinance that I wanted to discuss. The first one was so that our code would, it'd be clear that our code met the standards set out in some updates to the state ordinance or state code that was passed in 2023 and 2024. The bulk of this required the city to undertake different review cycles and a more administrative defined review and approval process. And that our third was that cities are required to post subdivision requirements and checklists on the website to make available to the public and applicant. Really what the state wanted to do with Senate Bill 174 and House Bill 406 was to create a more uniform review process across the state for all subdivision reviews. And in practice, the city has been fulfilling these standards. However, after review of the ordinance, we felt like it'd be appropriate to go through and clarify several aspects of that review process to ensure the city would meet those standards. And then also to, while we were doing that, we felt like it'd be good to tie in our site plan review process as well to ensure that the site plan process and subdivision process were following similar tracks. So we didn't have to do different things for different applications. Okay, so if you want to go to the next slide and then the one after that. So this is our current subdivision application approval process. And so currently our code requires that there's a pre-application meeting. So that's just they come in, they make a request, staff meets with them, talks about different aspects of their application. Then they move to a preliminary approval, which the Planning Commission is the land use authority for preliminary plats. We do have a 2-week deadline application. Staff would confirm that's complete. We distribute the plans to key members of staff and districts to try to get their feedback and proper red lines. And then we present those to the Planning Commission, who then discuss, either approve the conditions or deny the application, occasionally tabling it if they feel like there's aspects of it that haven't been resolved that should be before a preliminary approval could be granted. After that, we have a construction drawing review. This is submitted to the city engineer, and an applicant must respond to each concern or condition that the Planning Commission imposed during the preliminary approval process. After that, we have the final approval, which currently the Planning Commission is the approval authority. There is a 5-day application deadline listed in code, which that doesn't match what our typical application deadline is, and that'd be really tight for us to turn around. And then once that is we also require at that point that they have to have approved construction drawings from the city engineer. And after that, they can move forward with recording the plat, do pre-construction meeting, getting building permits, those type of steps. And so the next slide, you'll see that there is kind of a calendar of what that review process currently looks like for just one phase of that application. So we'll assume preliminary application. We have our application deadline. That then planning staff, we review that to ensure it's complete. Then we could submit it through other staff and other districts for their review. And then we put together those reports. We'll send it to the land use authority for their review. And then the land use authority has that meeting. And so as you can see, it is a pretty compact review timeline, depending on the project. And there are some times that we find that there's things missing or things that need to be changed before we feel like it's appropriate to take it to the Planning Commission. And so in those cases, we'll let them know of what's inadequate after we do the full review and require them to provide that additional information if needed.
Hey, Stephen.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question on that. It looks like some of this approval process goes over the weekend. And then, of course, we have some holidays in there. Does
Yep.
that interrupt anything or change, or do you move around that?
So if there is a holiday in there, like if we have a Monday holiday, which isn't infrequent, typically that doesn't change the timing. We just try to do better at making sure plans get out early enough so that there is time to do those reviews.
Okay.
So the next several set of slides is kind of a compare and contrast to the new state code versus what our current code says, and then some notes on what staff and the Planning Commission have recommended in those changes. So we're looking at the first one. As I mentioned, one of the first things that it recommended, or the state code is requiring, is different review cycle. It defines review cycles, subdivision applications, subdivision ordinance review, and subdivision plan reviews. These are kind of serves as the backbone of a lot of the changes that are within the new state code. And we did not have those defined in our code. And so we have added those. One thing that I will talk, this is probably the best time to talk about this, is we had some debate on the Planning Commission level about whether or not we should incorporate the state language directly and that process directly into our code, or just reference back to it. And after some discussion, staff and the Planning Commission both felt like it would be more clear and more transparent for us to incorporate the state's standards and review process directly into our code. And so the ordinance that's in front of you, not only do we define those processes, but then we actually write them out, how that's going to look in West Haven. And one of the other reasons we did that is there are some vagueness in how the state standards work. And so we're able to provide a little bit more details how that's going to work within our city while still working within that application process. Okay, so you want to go to the next slide. So the next one talks about pre-application meetings. So currently, under the new state standard, it states that if an applicant requests a pre-application meeting, the municipality shall, within 15 business days after the request, schedule the meeting to review the concept plan and give initial feedback. Our current code makes that requirement, that a pre-application meeting would be required. Based on the reading of the code, and the Utah League of Cities and Towns also created a kind of some guidelines for how to interpret the code. And based on their recommendation, they state that this pre-application meeting is a recommended process, but could no longer be required. And so we've made that change in the proposed ordinance. You want to go to the next slide, Emily? So our code, so the next section talks about the land use authority for process of subdivision review and approval for preliminary plans or preliminary plats. It was very specific and outlined that city councils could no longer be the approval authority for subdivisions. Currently, our code states that the Planning Commission is the land use authority for subdivision applications. So our code already complies with this. And so no changes were made to that in process. So we did add some clarification language within the ordinance. The next item talks about when, and next slide talks about the new code requires that if an applicant submits a complete application, that the city will have 15 days to review and submit a report both to the applicant and to the developer, to the applicant and the Planning Commission or the Land Use Authority, that the review of that plan. So we have, our code does not outline a timeline, but that has been incorporated into the draft ordinance. The next item, and this is something that I wanted to discuss with the city council and receive some of your feedback. So the process for subdivision review and approval, so this is referring to final plats and subdivision improvement plans. So state code lists out this process that a municipality shall review and approve or deny final subdivision plat applications in accordance with the provisions of this section and municipal ordinances, which may permit concurrent processing a final subdivision plat application with the preliminary subdivision plat application and may not require Planning Commission or City Council approval. Currently, our code requires that the Planning Commission is the final plat authority or land use authority. So this was discussed at the Planning Commission with staff, and the Planning Commission, as stated, is currently the approval authority, and state code states that may not require the Planning Commission or City Council for approval for a final plat. Staff and the Utah League of Cities Town would recommend that the ordinance would change land use authority from final plats to staff. However, after discussion with the Planning Commission, they felt that the term may not was not as restrictive as potentially could be interpreted as. And so they felt like it was more appropriate for the Planning Commission to remain that land use authority. And so this is one item within the proposed ordinance that I would like the council to consider and potentially deviate from what the Planning Commission recommended. At the next slide, this talks about the review of subdivision applications and subdivision improvement plans. So the new code requires that we cannot require subdivision improvement.
Can I
Sorry.
ask a question going back to the verbiage on may not? Amy, how do you read that? Do you read that as, I mean, I know shall's stronger, but do you read that as this is kind of our option to decide on that?
Are you talking about
Yeah,
the final
B.
on B
plans?
under the state code.
When it says may, you can still do it. It says may not require. They really want to move away, I know the legislature and the league are recommending moving away from having like city council approval or having planning commission approval for those final plats. And I can understand, why after going through the process, when I was doing the interim planner thing, because by the time you hit final, all the stuff that they were supposed to have done is very technical because of, having the engineer has to approve certain things, or like getting the letters from the utilities that they're going to provide it. I mean, these are very administrative things versus, or like with the engineering stuff, very technical things that whether or not the planning commission should be, involved in, versus just making it more streamlined and having the, having like the engineer and the community development director, and was there one more, or just the two of you?
Just us two.
Yeah. Be the ones that just are able to sign off on it versus having it go all the way through the planning.
So generally at that point, would it be like, there's some technical changes that planning commission's already recommended, and they would make sure that they are finished before final approval?
Yeah, that's what's been going on now, because like Stephen doesn't put stuff back onto the agenda for the final until those things have been met. Unless it's something pretty minor technical thing that has to be completed before like the pre-construction meeting with the engineer anyway. That's the only time I don't know, really noticed that stuff gets put back onto the agenda for the final, but normally it's, have they completed all of the conditions that the planning commission has set, and that they've already, the engineer and the community development director are looking at those things before they're willing to move it forward.
Yeah. And maybe just to kind of talk a little bit about the discussion that we had with planning commission, because I do think the planning commission does have some sound reasoning for wanting to keep that authority. Though, my recommendation would be that it be moved to the staff level. I think the planning commission has concerns that not always in the past has the preliminary and the final always lined up directly, or there hasn't been stuff that has been resolved with the final application. And so they wanted to retain to be the last step to ensure that their conditions, the things that they were concerned about during the preliminary reviews, were taken care of, which I can understand that aspect. And that's one of the main reasons why they wanted to retain that approval authority, is to be able to ensure that the things that they were concerned about during the preliminary phases were being addressed. And I mean, as staff, I can say like, oh, I know that I will make sure that's a priority, but I'm not always going to be here. Hopefully for a while, but so that's really where the planning commission was coming from, is they wanted to kind of serve as a backstop to ensure that everything going through at least had one last look through a public process.
If I could make a comment on that, I would agree with the planning commission, and here's my reasoning behind it, is we have, and it's nothing against staff, but staff doesn't live here or, part of West Haven. You do the best interest of West Haven. I think having people that are residents of this area, make a big difference on the direction and what is approved overall, since they're appointed and approved by the council. Where that's being taken away, I think it's important that we have residents that are involved in the decision process for that purpose. I think there's other good reasons for the Development Review Committee to be part of it, but I do think having residents involved directly with that, I think is key.
Like I said, I understand that reasoning. I do think potentially we may encounter some resistance from applicants who are familiar with this aspect of state law. And so that could increase there could be some risk to moving that direction. And I think, Amy could probably speak more to that than I could, but I think that's my biggest concern with not changing it that way.
What I see happening is if there is resistance, it would be more along the lines of if the planning commission had, pushed back any on maybe different conditions or that sort of thing if they haven't been completed, and I could see an applicant going and appealing it to our appeal hearing officer. I see that as being kind of probably the biggest risk, but there's also the problem of depending on what the pushback is and depending on what the delays are, if there's significant financial issues involved, like there's weird timing stuff, that sort of stuff and about whether or not we might have some liability because of that.
Yep.
But most of the time what happens is, I don't know, I see developers, complying and working with staff and moving through. But I do think that seriously that the legislature is going to move it so completely out of the planning commission. It's not going to just say may not require. I can see them absolutely taking it out because there's been some pretty significant issues down south. It's always those in Salt Lake that that cause problems for the rest of us. And that's one of the reasons why they've made all these changes is because there are developments significantly being held up down south. You're not having that as much here. I haven't seen that really happen here. But I do know of that it going on down south pretty significantly.
When we met with the governor's meeting that we had, I think there was a lot of talk about that. And I know there are very, very few. The number was thrown out that about 90% are in good shape, moving the direction that they should. And there was a smaller percentage of that. So I just feel like it should probably, and I don't know how the council feels, but I feel like it should stay within, some residency to have that decision process to shape and put together things that are on our general plan.
Yeah. So if the council, there are some other options with that as well. There have been some municipalities that have created more of an approval body that's not the planning commissioner council. Sometimes they're hybrids of a couple of planning commissioners and a couple of members of staff in order to.
I've heard of that too.
And so if we wanted to, there's concern about the liability, which I think is fair. There are other options that we could pursue that would allow for a different approval process through a body that would have some of that citizen representation. And so if that's something that we want to explore, that is something that we could, we could figure out what that looks like.
I think, I definitely understand why you would want to have it at the planning commission level. I think it's important to have the resident input. I also see the other side of it, just from a business owner standpoint. I've been in situations where people have held things up and it costs you money. So I kind of see both sides of that. I don't see that happening in this city, but down the road, who knows? So I wouldn't mind looking at the hybrid approach there, just so there is some involvement, because I think it's important to have as much citizen involvement as we can without creating liabilities for business owners and for the city itself. So if there's kind of a happy medium there, I wouldn't mind looking at that personally.
Okay. Is anybody else? We can definitely put something together. I guess I would like to know if there's any other thoughts from the council about that.
I'd rather leave it with the planning commission while we have it.
I feel the same way.
Okay. Well, Okay, that sounds good. Unless otherwise directed, we'll keep it as it's currently proposed. But this is, like I said, we don't feel like there's a push to get it approved today. And so if you want time to think about this, there's definitely time to do that. So the next slide, this mostly just talks about the state code was updated so that you couldn't require, well, the initial, I don't know if we should go into all this background. The initial change to state code made it required that they had to do construction drawings during preliminary approval process. And then all the cities changed their code and developers hated it because they had to invest a lot of money into the construction drawings and then had to change a bunch of stuff. And so now the state code just changed that you can't require construction drawings for preliminary and final. You'd have to pick one or the other. And so our recommendation as a recurrent practice is to require it during final. And so that way they go through the preliminary plan and plat with the planning commission, work out some of those kinks in the design, and then they can invest money in the full construction drawings. So the next slide. So this requires, essentially state code requires that there is a detailed plan review process. And what this really includes is that we require that once they get a preliminary approval, they have to submit a subdivision improvement plans or construction drawings or civil drawings and a final plat. Then there is set out different review cycles for how that works. And I have in a couple slides, I have a little bit more detailed process on how that works. Essentially, what it allows us to do is to review their plans. We have 20 business days to review those plans, provide an index report back to the applicant with any changes or questions that we might have. And then they have 20 business days to respond. And we can do that 4 times. The idea that the state wanted to do was create a unified process across the state. So like some of your big builders like Ivory or Nielsen Homes, when they do a subdivision in West Haven or they do subdivision in Ogden or wherever, that the process for reviewing those construction drawings looks very similar. So we have updated our code to repeat that process. And like I said, in a couple slides, I have a flow chart on how that works, or how hopefully it'll work. And so the last slide in this section I have is that we're supposed to publish subdivision application and we're supposed to publish and maintain a list of codes and checklists for applications. And so what I've actually done tonight is I've placed in front of you what the draft of those look like. Those aren't actually under consideration tonight, but I wanted to provide them to show that once this ordinance is approved, we'll be ready to go and be able to implement that code section. This is something we've already started to implement softly and kind of let developers know. We've created a simplified version based on our current standards. But this will be what we'll publish on our website and incorporate into our applications. So if we just want to jump to the next slide, Emily, the one with the diagram. So this is kind of the diagram of what the review process looks like. It looks really simple, I know, but so this is, as stated, we have to follow for preliminary plat when that comes in. We have the 15-day deadline that we submit to the land use authority and them for approval. After that our preliminary approval is granted, we have to follow this process. This is a summarize of that process. So essentially, they submit improvement drawings and the final plat. This is reviewed by the city, and we'll create an index report and we'll send that report to the applicant. The applicant then has 20 days to respond, and that can happen up to 4 times. Eventually, hopefully within this process, and hopefully not by the 4th time, we have 1 of 2 options. The drawings are approved by the city, and the applicant continues to the final approval, or the drawings are denied by the city. If they're denied by the city, the applicant really has two decisions. The applicant may restart from preliminary, they may resubmit or withdraw. The applicant can also appeal the decision that we've made. And how state code outlines that is that the city gets to select an engineer, the applicant gets to select an engineer, and then those two engineers get to select a third engineer, and we'll review that process or review the conflict, why it was denied, and then they will consider whether or not that the denial was based off of city standards or best practice or engineering standards. If the appeal is granted, then it goes back, then it goes for final approval. But if the appeal is denied, then the applicant can restart from preliminary again. So we can, I kind of talked about the next couple of slides. So let's go to the preliminary, let's go to, let's see, let's go to the development review process update. It's like, you want to go down. Yep. So as I kind of talked about, one thing we'd like to do is set up our application process for site plans and subdivisions to kind of follow the same steps. So the administrative land use, so looking at administrative land use authority table that has been proposed, essentially it summarizes who makes what decisions based off what's already incorporated into the code, and sometimes clarifies or dictates who will be the approval authority for certain items. The other item that we want to do was to create an official development review committee. The DRC. What this committee does is set out to be a review body and recommendation body for land use applications and construction drawings. And so essentially what this committee looks like, the set members are the community development director, city planner, city engineer, public works director, and fire marshal. And then there's a list of alternates or additional members that can be invited to participate, including the building official, other contract engineers or planners, the city manager, city attorney. We also have the ability to incorporate other districts into that review process as well. The main job of the DRC will not be to be approval, but a recommendation body. The other item that we have done is we're moving all of our applications online to Civic Review. And this online application actually helps us track the review cycles itself. It has a program in it that will track the date that something was submitted, when we started the review cycle, when we got back to them, so to ensure that we're meeting our deadlines. And then our city planner will be the one that's in charge of tracking these applications and ensuring that the applications and review processes are followed. So if you want to go to the next one, I already kind of talked about this, but in the code itself, we're stating that the DRC's role will be to review all land use application, advise land use authority, hold pre-application meetings, and also assist applicants and property owners in how to navigate the development of the system. And so if you want to go to the next slide. So this table has been proposed to be incorporated within our ordinance. This is essentially a summary of who has what ability to approve what type of application. And so as you can see for the city council, a lot of the authority lies on legislative decisions, including ordinances, zone changes, general plan and master plans, annexations. The other thing that is required by code is modification of cities' rights of ways and easements. So one thing you might have seen in the amended subdivision process is there's an exclusion. Typically right now, the planning commission is the approval authority, but we added an exception if they are seeking to modify an existing right of way or abandon an existing right of way as part of that process. By state code, that has to be approved by the city council. So the planning commission has more of the administrative items. So they have preliminary subdivision plats, final subdivision plats, subdivision plat amendments, preliminary site plans, conditional use permits, and final site plans. Then for the technical drawings, we have subdivision improvement plans and site improvement plans. That would be approval by the city engineer and community development director. A new aspect of state code is for boundary adjustments. We now have to have a land use authority to govern those. So if somebody wants to do a boundary adjustment within the city, that's not a subdivision. So they're not creating a lot. They're not modifying an existing subdivision. There has to be somebody set up to be able to approve those. And so after a discussion with the planning commission, we felt that could be a staff item. And then sign permits, currently the code dictates the community development director is the approval authority. And then we have building official over building permits, and then we have a hearing officer for land use appeals and variances. We do have a note within the code that the city manager for staff vacancies can appoint somebody else to fill that stead. And so if my position went vacant, Sean could appoint either the city planner or a contract planner to fill that, or the city engineer or whoever he feels would be most appropriate, or the city attorney, like happened recently.
Any development that has an MDA comes to the city council though,
Correct.
because that's an ordinance.
Yep.
So we would also do those site plan
Yep.
plats as well.
Yeah, and that's something that maybe that might have been an oversight when we did the table. That's something we could add to the table, that MDAs are approved.
Well, they follow under ordinance. I just wanted to be clear that we would still see those.
Yeah, oh, that's an easy addition. Yeah, and that's already set out in state law for how that's supposed to be handled by the city council too. So, but that won't, yeah, we can definitely add that.
Who is the hearing officer when there's a dispute?
So we have a gentleman named Craig Call. He was the previous Utah Property Rights Ombudsman and is a practice as an attorney in the area. And so if somebody has an appeal or a variance, we have an online application that somebody can fill out. There's certain deadlines for an appeal that you have to meet. And then those are sent to Craig or Mr. Call directly. And then he organizes when those hearings are held and ensures that all communication between both parties there's no private communication with us and Mr. Call regarding any appeal or variance. So now we'll jump into the site plan application process. And so, so we made some changes a lot to the standards. The biggest reason or the biggest changes that we're doing is, as you can see in the current code and based on this slide, is that we have a list of stuff, but sometimes it's not detailed what that means. Like a signage plan, like what exactly does that mean? Do we need to see the details of the signs? Do we need to know what material type? And so there's been some interpretation and some pushback from some applicants on some of these items. And so one of the items we wanted to do is ensure that the stuff that we needed to ensure applications comply with the code are detailed out within the standard. So for the site layout, we've included a checklist that applicants have to meet. So traffic circulation, setbacks, access points, fencing, gating, outdoor storage, etc. For a landscaping plan, we didn't make it, or for building elevations, we just listed out the code below that they have to comply with. For landscape plans, there wasn't any major changes. For parking, we now require that a parking table is showed on those plans. For signage, we included some more details for that means. We're also now requiring that a utility plan with will serve or availability letters, a preliminary stormwater plan, outdoor lighting plan, and UDOT approval or pre-application meeting minutes if they're located or need a conditional access permit from UDOT. So most of that is just clarification of stuff that we were already requiring, but wanted to make sure it was clear in our code. The other items that have been considered is current requirements is planning commission for approval. Planning commission is the approval authority for preliminary site plan, construction drawings, and final approval. And city council is approval for alternate building materials. The other item is city council is the approval authority for sites that contain more than 40,000 square feet of building. So the so proposed, the planning commission would be approval for preliminary and final still. The DRC reviews and makes recommendations. City engineer and community development director are approval for improvement plans. That the listed we listed some additional exceptions for this process. Mostly we wanted to clarify when you'd have to come back in and get a site plan approval, especially if you have an existing site, and what exceptions the planning commission could approve. For instance, we have a lot of sites that come in that don't meet our landscape code. They don't have secondary water. And so the planning commission has been allowing and providing some landscape exceptions based off of letters from the water companies or districts. And so we codified that. This is also a part that we made one change between the planning commission recommendation and the version that's in front of you. Currently in the exception, the planning commission just had additional buildings. And after reading it this last week, I felt like, oh, we should add paved parking areas or other substantial changes to clarify when it would have to come back, because they don't necessarily need an updated site plan just if they add additional buildings. Occasionally they expand their parking lot, and that could require new stormwater plans and parking requirement reviews. And so we added a few of those details, and I felt like that was overlooked on my part as we were going through it with planning commission. The other item that we added was planning commission's approval for alternate building materials after DRC recommendation. So instead of those alternate materials coming to city council, our recommendation is that the DRC review those, make a recommendation to the planning commission, and the planning commission could review the alternate materials. Essentially just help save the applicant some time in that process. And then I have a few more slides, but I feel like I've kind of talked about it to death a little bit. And most of these are summaries and kind of visualizations of stuff that I've already discussed. Are there any questions?
The council have any questions?
Yes, a lot, Stephen, a lot.
It was a good read.
Yeah.
And good information.
Awesome.
In your recommendation with the minor alterations, is that something we would table possibly to just correct and then bring it back, or do you want to?
It's really up to the council. The main item I have takeaway that the change that you'd like to see is an addition of master development agreements listed on the table of approval under the city council. That's a pretty simple fix. And so if the council would like, I could take that back and make that change and present the update to the council at the next meeting. That's also simple enough that I think could be incorporated into a motion if the council wanted to move on it tonight. But once again, I know a lot, so I don't want to put any pressure on the council to make any decisions tonight if you feel it needs more time for review.
Oh, they don't mind pressure. Go ahead. Any more questions? What do you think on here?
So are you currently operating under the old standards, or are you waiting on us, I guess is my question.
So we have been operating under what state code requires, just because state code is requiring. And there's a lot of things within state code that our code doesn't necessarily highlight or recommend, but we could incorporate it pretty easily into the process. And so we're still able to comply with state standards without this being approved. I do feel like this provides some clarification and backing for decisions that staff might need to make.
I'd rather look at the ordinance itself for a minute. About the slideshow. So in reading this in section 156.004, which is on page 6 of the ordinance, just when I was reading this about privately held infrastructure, made me think about maintenance of public areas that are now public areas, but it's still under construction, right, in a development.
Yeah.
So we don't have any real clarity that I'm aware of in any ordinance. Maybe there is of, let's say for right now, we have a road that people don't think are our road. And we're not maintaining it right now. So who's taking care of that, right? We have water issues, like, so if it's set up so that now there's some drainage problems, but it's still under development, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, do we speak to that anywhere that says that's the city's problem or that's the developer's problem because they're still working in there and they should be maintaining this until it's fully done? But since it's a dedicated right of way, now it's the city's. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do know what you're
I
talking
think I've
about.
talked to Ed for a minute about that. Do we have something that we can now rely on and say, no, you get to go take care of that problem that's draining into these people's yard?
Yeah, I think, yeah, so I think part of the adjustment made in the section was try to clarify that. Because when I
I mean, this talks to privately held infrastructure.
Hmm.
Now, this is public
yeah,
because we own it. So that's what I'm talking about. When I read this, that made me think of that, but I don't know that it directly speaks to that. Maybe,
Okay.
do you feel like it does?
I guess, Ed, do you have any
I
thoughts?
just want to add one comment. It's public, but we have not yet accepted it until it is completed in accordance with the approved plans. So we still have that ability to make them adhere to the approved plans. Just like what happened with Westwood and the drainage, we were able to go and direct the contractor to fix his problems. We can't necessarily always tell them how to do it, but they have to give us a plan that we approve. And at the final, before they want to go into a warranty period, before we release any of the performance escrow, all cities affected staff will do inspections and make sure that it meets all our standards so we can quote unquote accept it as official city infrastructure.
Okay.
And then we're responsible for it at that point.
Accepted that yet?
No.
Sorry, I think I probably just misunderstood, but yes, so what I was saying is correct. And I think what this section was mostly geared at is a lot of times people will do like stormwater ponds or private roadways that the city doesn't want to end up being on the hook for maintaining. So we're requiring that when the subdivision goes through and they're proposing that you have these public infrastructure that's privately held, that there's some maintenance plan or some sort of document
Right,
governing.
and that's
that.
important.
Yeah.
That's just what jogged my memory on when I read it.
Yes, it's covered.
It's good clarification for sure. What other questions from the council on here?
I had one on page 17.
On the same for the subdivision.
Yeah. 156.005, when it's talking about secondary access, developments of 1 or 2 family dwellings where it exceeds 30 shall have 2 separate approved access roads. Does that also need to include apartments?
So I took that language directly from fire code because that's what fire code requires. Typically, I guess that's a good question, and I've had some thoughts about that. Typically, if you have an apartments or townhomes, I think they're listed a little bit differently within the fire standards just because of their access and sprinkling. Normally, the fire code would still require 2 accesses in and out of the complex, but not necessarily each building has to have 2 access points.
Right. When I'm just reading this, it's saying you need a secondary access for 1 or 2 family.
Yep.
So it's not including apartments, right? So I don't know that when would it ever be developed that way. It would be ridiculous,
Yeah,
but
and
it doesn't say it here is the way that I read it.
correct. And that's one reason. So the line within fire code is that first sentence. Then we added all developments shall comply with West Haven, and we require district access standards to try to catch other developments that weren't 1 or 2 family dwellings. So that was the idea behind that, because there are a more complex set of fire regulations for apartment buildings and how those accesses work that we didn't incorporate into this proposal.
So you're saying the last sentence would cover that.
I believe so.
Are you good with that, Amy? Yes. Okay. I made a note on page 25, which is 156.09. Letter B, when it's talking about water. And that we need to provide water in accordance with the local culinary and secondary water, and struck the 1/2 acre. So if somebody sits on a piece of property that only has water shares, does it state in here that they are going to be required to turn in a water share to then put other homes on their property?
So we don't have any control over this because we don't have our own water. And so this change was actually something that I asked to have changed because we have no control, nor can we like require a specific amount of water to be turned over. It has to be whatever the primary, whatever the culinary or the secondary water authority says has to be turned over. And they have to go through, there's a pretty specific process that they have to go through in order to show how much water has to be provided.
So Taylor West Weaver is going to ask them for a certain amount of water.
What was that?
Like Taylor West Weaver would ask them for a certain amount of water. That's what
Yes.
just
And they have to go through, there's very specific sections of the code. They have to go through studies and they have to be able to show that this is how much water is necessary for like a household. And so this is why it's that they're able to ask for, a certain amount of water shares, which if they don't go through that process, they can be in trouble with the state and be asking for too much. I know of a number of different municipalities or other entities that have done that. And the problem is once the water gets turned over, you don't get to turn it back.
Right.
And so but we have no control over that. They are the ones who have to determine what that is.
Okay.
But it does, and the code would clarify that they would need to follow their requirements for turning in water shares or whatever it is.
Are you talking about our code here?
Yeah, our
change?
code
Yeah.
would reference that, right?
This change says
does
that
Okay.
they have to, that the owner or developer of any land to be platted as a subdivision of one lot or more will be required prior to recording the final plat to provide water in accordance with the local culinary and secondary water authority.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to make sure I was.
Yeah.
That it was saying what I thought.
Other questions? I do like the work that's been put into this. I think there's a lot of detail to it to help clarify, and even the supplement you gave to us with the listings. That's really helpful too, to know what's required and that they have to follow that, because those are referenced quite regularly, even though we're not directly involved with that anymore as a council. The planning commission being land use versus your putting everything else together with this group that will allow them to review these plans and make sure they're correct.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, we need to decide what we want to do, if we want to accept it as is with the few changes, or if we want to table it to get the revisions.
I did have.
It was 2 revisions,
I
right?
think the revisions are small.
Yeah.
I don't
Um,
want to table it.
Under general provisions, you struck C, that was any proposed subdivision with 31 or more lots. You just explain what the reasoning for taking out the 2 roads is. Is that because it's not always necessary with fire
Yeah.
chief or?
That was moved to a different section.
Yeah. That was changed for two reasons. Is I felt like C, any pro subdivision with 31 or more lots will require a minimum of 2 roads. I felt like that standard was vague. Like, I don't know what 2 roads exactly means. Okay.
Right.
If somebody were to fight us on that. And so we removed that and then added a more detailed, or we quoted fire code in that section below that covered that standard.
Okay.
Well, if there is no other questions, I'm ready for a motion on this one with the changes.
I didn't write the changes.
I
down.
didn't either.
The main change that I have is the addition of master development agreements into the land use table under the city council.
Okay.
Is that the only one? The first one you brought up on there? Was there another one?
No.
It was like an hour ago, so I don't remember.
But
No.
did we need to change
The planning commission.
the planning commission?
But so
it was
yeah,
That's already part of the ordinance. He's asking us to do it differently.
Yeah.
It already states it that way.
yeah. So the planning commission's recommendation is so the planning commission would be the approval authority for final plat applications.
And it's written that way, right?
Yep, and that's currently what's proposed.
Okay.
Perfect, then that's the difference. We just have one change, then basic change.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve ordinance 10-2025, amending the Title III Administrative Chapter 32 Organizations and Title 15 Land Usage, including Chapter 150 General Provisions, Chapter 156 Subdivision Standards, and Chapter 157 Zoning Regulations, with the change of the addition of the Master Development Agreement to the City Council responsibilities.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this ordinance 10-2025? Do a roll call on this. Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Councilmember Morse.
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders.
Aye.
And Councilmember Call.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries on that. Woo, thank you for that. Appreciate it. That's long. It was really good to go through and read that. I mean, there was a lot of good information there and definitely changes that needed to be made. So thank you and the Planning Commission for spending the time doing so. Okay. Perfect. All right. We will move now to item 11, action on resolution 47-2025, extension of the Utopia Fiber Network to Stonefield Park, with Utopia being an internet service provider for this internet connection. Our city manager, Mr. Warnke, will cover this one.
Just briefly, Mayor and Council, I was just going to let you know that I believe everything's in order, but one point of clarification. In this scenario, Utopia is going to be the ISP provider and also install the infrastructure. So there's a monthly fee of $86. $50 is attributed to the ISP portion. The 36 is attributed to the cost to extend. And then that payment after 84 months, that $36 would drop off and it would just be the $50 going forward after that.
I didn't realize they could be their ISP provider.
You know, no, I mean, you're right. They are not, but for cities, they will be. Otherwise, you go through
Yeah, there's.
yeah, they just give us essentially a wholesale connection. So it's probably better phrased. We get a wholesale connection rather than having to go through an ISP.
Right.
Yeah.
Council, okay with that?
Mhm.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 47-2025, the extension of Utopia Fiber's network to Stonefield Park, with Utopia being an internet service provider for this connection.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on resolution 47-2025? Okay, we'll do a roll call on this one. Councilmember Call.
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Councilmember Morse.
Aye.
And Councilmember Saunders.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries on that. Thank you, Sean, for doing that. Moving to item 12, action on resolution 48-2025, amendment to the interlocal agreement between West Haven City and Taylor West Weaver Water Improvement District. And we'll turn it over to our engineer, Mr. Burgoyne.
Thank you, Mayor. You may recall back in April, we had asked the council to enter into an interlocal agreement with Taylor West Weaver Water with regard to the 3300 South Improvement Project. As I explained at the time, typically when we do the design, there's some water infrastructure that has to be relocated or changed as normal part of the project. But in this case, Taylor West Weaver came and said they were going to do a wholesale project, which would include some of those kind of relocations and things like that. And in return for us not including in our contract, we would reimburse them for those same costs that would have been in the original contract. The 3300 South project is finished. From all indications, it went very well. Taylor West Weaver is very happy. They've asked us now if we would consider amending the agreement to include the work on 5100 when we start that next year.
Okay. Any questions from the council on this? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
I would make a motion to approve resolution 48-2025, amendment to the interlocal agreement between West Haven City and Taylor West Weaver Water Improvement District.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this resolution 48-2025? If not, we will do a roll call on this one. Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders.
Aye.
Councilmember Call.
Aye.
And Councilmember Morse. Okay, motion carries on that. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it. All right, item 13 is just a presentation or discussion for the council. Any election to continuation from any agenda item we had earlier. Do we have any other discussion items that we didn't cover? Okay, we'll move on to item 14. This will move us to an executive session. Executive session, the council will consider a motion to enter into a closed meeting for the purpose of a strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation and the purpose, exchange, or lease of real property to be held in accordance with the provision Utah Code 52-4-205. We will need a motion to move into that executive session.
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?